Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. Chapter 6, Humpty Dumpty. However, the egg only became larger and larger and looked more and more human. When she had come to it, she saw that it had eyes and a nose and mouth. It was Humpty Dumpty himself. It can't be anybody else, she said to herself. I'm sure of it. Humpty Dumpty was sitting on the top of a high wall. He didn't move and didn't look at Alice. He looks exactly like an egg, she said aloud. It's very unpleasant, Humpty Dumpty said after a long silence, looking away from Alice, when someone calls one an egg. I said, you looked like an egg, sir, Alice gently explained, and some eggs are very pretty. Some people, said Humpty Dumpty, looking away from her as usual, have no more sense than a baby. Alice didn't know what to say to this, so she stood and repeated to herself. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty in his place again. Don't stand there talking to yourself like that, Humpty Dumpty said. Tell me your name. My name is Alice. What a stupid name, Humpty Dumpty interrupted. Why do you sit here alone? Asked Alice. She didn't want to begin an argument. Because there is nobody with me, said Humpty Dumpty. Did you think I didn't know the answer to that? Ask another. Don't you think you'd be safer down on the ground? Alice went on. This wall is so tall. Of course I don't think so. If I fell off, the king has promised me to send all his horses and all his men, Alice interrupted. Yes, all his horses and all his men, Humpty Dumpty went on. They'd pick me up again in a minute. It's my turn to ask questions. How old did you say you were? 7 years and 6 months, said Alice. Now, if you'd asked me, I'd advise you to stay at 7, but it's too late now. I never asked advice about growing, Alice said. Too proud? He asked. What a beautiful belt you've got on. Alice changed the subject. Or a beautiful cravat. No, a belt, I mean. I beg your pardon. Humpty Dumpty was very angry and said nothing for a minute or two. It is terrible, he said at last, when a person doesn't know how a cravat looks like. It's a cravat, child, and a beautiful one. It's a present from the White King and Queen. Is it really? Said Alice. She was pleased to find a good subject at last. They gave it to me for an unbirthday present. But what is an unbirthday present? When somebody gives you a present and it isn't your birthday, of course. Alice looked at him thoughtfully. I like birthday presents best, she said. You don't know what you're talking about, cried Humpty Dumpty. How many days are there in a year? 365, said Alice. And how many birthdays have you? 1. And if you take 1 from 365, 364, of course. So there are 364 days when you may get unbirthday presents. You are very good at explaining things, sir, said Alice. Would you tell me the meaning of the poem which is called Jabberwocky? Let's hear it, said Humpty Dumpty. I can explain all the poems. Alice repeated the first verse. 'Twas brillig, and the slightly doves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome wreath outgrape. That's enough to begin with, Humpty Dumpty interrupted. There are a lot of hard words there. Brillig means 4 o'clock in the afternoon. All right, said Alice. And slithy? It means lithe and slimy. Lithe is the same as active. I see it now, Alice said thoughtfully. And what are toves? Something like badgers, and they are something like lizards. And what's about gyre and to gimble? To gyre is to go round and round like a gyroscope. To gimble is to make holes like a gimlet. And the wabe is a lone round a sundial, said Alice. She finally understood something. Yes, well then, mimsy is flimsy and miserable, and the borogove is a thin bird which looks very shabby. And then mome wreath, said Alice. Well, a wreath is a sort of green pig, but mome, I'm not sure about it. And what does outgrabe mean? Well, outgribing is something between bellowing and whistling, with a kind of sneeze in the middle. Where did you find this hard poem? I read it in a book, said Alice. You know, I can repeat poetry too, said Humpty Dumpty. Oh, you don't have to, said Alice. Well then, said Humpty Dumpty, goodbye. Alice got up, gave him her hand. Goodbye till we meet again, she said cheerfully. Humpty Dumpty gave her one of his fingers to shake and said, You're exactly like other people. You should look at my face. People have different faces, Alice said in a thoughtful tone. That's a problem, said Humpty Dumpty. Your face is the same as everybody has. Alice waited a minute, but he didn't say anything else. She said goodbye once more and quietly went away. And then she heard a terrible noise. This is the end of chapter 6. Thank you for listening, and subscribe to Kuzra School.